Welcome back. So today's episode is for the person that I have been following for a few years. He is one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram because when he shares content, he also often put references, which is something that I really appreciate because how do you really navigate in this health space? Like there's so much information out there and so much of it is not really backed by science. So I'm always happy when I'm getting a post in my feed from Siim Land because often there's a reference and I know this guy is really doing the research. So Siim, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and I'm glad to speak with you.
So Siim, you are extremely productive. Like you've written several books, Stronger by Stress, Metabolic Autophagy, the Immunity Fix, the Mineral Fix. You have a podcast that's like pumping out episodes with like amazing guests. You have a YouTube where there's more than 1,000 subscribers. Like, tell me how are you doing all this stuff?
Right. Well, I think for me, it's something that I just enjoy doing. And if you are enjoying what you do, then you don't really need like a ton of motivation or that sort of like a willpower to do it. And it just comes like naturally to me. And at the same time, I'm also like, very, have good systems in place in terms of my productivity and my routines so that whenever I do work, then I get them done faster than like, let's say someone who doesn't have any structure in their day. I think, that's a kind of good combination of, being intrinsically motivated and at the same time being very good at what I do.
Fantastic. I would actually love to hear more about that. We're going to talk a bit in this episode as well about the immune system and the stuff that's going on now and how we can be more resilient. But like, I've been following you and you are productive. Many people write about being productive, but you don't see them executing as much. And your YouTube videos as well that are going out with like quiz content and so on. What are some of the systems that you actually, that you are following?
Well, they're not like really fancy systems or something. It's just that, let's say when I do wake up in the morning, then I start working and let's say I'm good at avoiding distractions and I'm good at going into the flow state. And then whenever I do work, then I just get it done really fast. So I don't know, like there's no by this time I don't have like any special routines or magic tricks up my sleeve. I just do it, so to say. I just show up because it's like a muscle, like anything else in your body. Your brain is always like adapting and wiring itself based upon your habits and the activities you do. And after years of doing this. Even then, like years ago, I was already very aware of this. And because of that, I was, very mindful of how do I train my brain to work and how do I, let's say, strengthen this muscle that is, the productivity muscle, et cetera, et cetera. So now I don't really need to have any special routines besides just, being able to avoid distractions and as well just show up consistently.
Sounds good. So when you say avoiding distractions, I'm getting like the social media, the email and that stuff. Do you structure your days so like you only check social media a few times a day and like you have certain days that you work on specific things, or just like you wake up, you just get at it?
Well, I used to do it more in the past that I would have, like I wouldn't check my email before noon or I would only do my social media a few times a day. But like even now, I don't even need that. So I can even like, use it whenever I want to without really feeling that it starts to distract me, so to say. So that I don't know how to explain it, but it's more of a matter of your mindset about it. If you're worried that it's going to distract you, you're like neurotic about it, you're afraid of the social media or you're afraid of getting some emails, then chances are it's going to wipe you out much more. Whereas if you're, let's say, not worried about it at all and you're, let's say, almost let's say carefree about it, then it's also not going to have that big of an impact on you whenever you do get distracted or something, because we all get distracted from time to time. It's what matters more is being able to get back on track and navigate your attention back to the task.
Cool. So you wrote the book The Immunity Fix, and I think we're definitely in a time right now where people are talking about the immune system. You're also making a new movie about resilience. Tell me a bit more like how you got into that and like what are things that someone listening or like what can I go implement after the two of us talk today?
Yeah, well, the idea behind the resilience and strengthening your immune system came to me when, it was like last year, around the first, let's say, weeks of the pandemic. I just, realized that, hey, this is nothing really new, or something is not very novel per se, because these kinds of events have happened in the past many times, and they're going to keep happening in the future. So we shouldn't, I was kind of surprised about how naive people were in terms of, how could this happen? Of course it could happen, and even worse things could happen. So it was actually like a really good wake up call, at least for the society, in terms of, waking up to the fact that nature and the world around us, the universe, doesn't really, it's not on our side, or there's no sides at all. It's very indifferent and neutral. And, only what happens are the events, and we can't control these events. We can only control our response and how do we react to them. So that's when I started to write my own first book, in that year was Stronger by Stress, that talks about resilience and stress adaptation. And also I was contacted by Dr. James Di Antonio, who I've had on my own podcast before as well. And he was aware of my work, and he had this idea behind writing some books. And one of them was the Mineral Fix that we published this year. But before that, he wanted to kind of start off with the Immunity Fix, because that was more relevant. And we wrote the book together. I co-authored it. So it's been actually doing real well. And I think it's one of the kind of best, let's say, almost like an atlas or encyclopedia for the immune system, because it's talks about it from a really holistic perspective, and covers a lot of different angles that let's say average doctors don't really aren't aware of.
And what are some of the things that we can actually do? Like, what can I go do to be stronger and be ready for getting infections and so on? Because we are getting viruses, bacteria in all the time. Thinking that we can protect ourselves, avoid that, I think is kind of utopia. So it's a matter of being ready for it, and of course not trying to catch the things where there might be a super spreading event or whatever you would call it.
Right. Well, there's your immune system itself has different categories or classifications, and there's the innate immune system, which is the one that you're born with, and there's also this adaptive immune system, which is the one that you develop over the course of your entire lifetime based upon your environment and the activities you do. So there's not a lot you can do to control your innate immune system. But you can definitely control the adaptive one. So you can always, work on increasing your resilience, keeping your antioxidant defense systems more active, and these other immune cells also more fired up, if that makes sense. So, for a good example would be these, exercise itself has a lot of immunomodulatory effects. It also, lowers the burden on your immune system by keeping you healthier. And likewise, things like saunas, heat exposure, and cold exposure, they also have been shown to have a very beneficial effect on the immune system, and upregulating all these different antioxidant defense systems in the body. And even in studies, Finnish studies, they've shown a lot of immune system benefits on influenza by using the regular sauna. And people who are doing some sort of this hyperthermic conditioning on a regular basis, then they see a reduced risk of getting the influenza, even as much as 20 to 30%. And yes, actually quite effective for doing that.
So is that before you get infected, or also after you get an infection, in regards to how bad it gets?
Well, I think that when it comes to these, stressors, these positive stressors, then it's more of a preventative approach is definitely better, because, they're still stressful to your system. And if you are sick, you're, not in your best shape in terms of your immunity, then at that point, it may be more counterproductive to, let's say, go into a sauna or do an ice bath, because you're already sick and you're already in a weakened state. So they are definitely a much wiser approach would be to use them as a preventative tool. And if you are actually getting already sick, have gotten sick, then at that point it's actually better to rest and recover and kind of nourish your body, give your body the proper nutrients to get over this disease faster.
And what about sauna? Because it's also getting big in Denmark. How often do you recommend the optimal sauna, and for how long?
Well,
And there's
the
different
sauna.
kinds of saunas. I think if you would just walk us through that.
Yeah, well, the idea behind the sauna is that it's going to cause this hyperthermia, which describes the elevated body temperature above what is normal, and anything that does it can cause the similar effects. So, like exercise also mimics some aspects of sauna, but yeah, usually it's just using the sauna is the fastest and most effective way of actually triggering this hyperthermia response. And although there are like some steam saunas or something, I think that the regular heat sauna is probably the fastest way of inducing it, as well as like the infrared sauna. That's also pretty effective in kind of heating up the body. And in terms of frequency, then it almost seems that the more the better, or the more often you do it, the better it is, because like in Finnish studies, there's one particular study about cardiovascular disease that those who took the sauna more than 4 times a week had up to 60% reduced cardiovascular disease mortality compared to those who did it only once a week. And they also had 40% reduced risk of all-cause mortality, like from all causes. So yeah, and that was compared to those people who were already taking a sauna once a week. So imagine what is the difference between those who don't take the sauna at all. And well, of course, there's some let's say nuances that have to be kept in mind. Maybe they weren't actually particularly healthy, and they just took the sauna and they ate like a bad diet generally, and that's why the reasons why they saw this big difference. But yeah, generally, like I think that taking a sauna every day is fine. So to say, at a minimum, you would want to do it at least like once a week or something.
And how long? And how warm? It's a question I often get. So when I talk to about sauna with people, because I love the saunas, people are like, how long and how warm?
Yeah, well, the temperature, anything that, how fast you're eventually going to get the majority of benefits, even if you're sitting, let's say, like a lower temperature, it's just going to take a longer time for your body to heat up. So if it's very hot temperature, then it's just, I would imagine that the time requirements are going to be smaller, so you're going to get the benefits faster if you're in like a really hot sauna. But generally, at least in research, it's at least like 15 to 20 minutes is where you start to see these immune system benefits, that the white blood cells increase and the other immune cells also get activated, and you also turn on these heat shock proteins that have antiviral effects, and they also like repair misfolded proteins and improve just general health. So yeah, like at least 15 to 20 minutes is going to be the length, and the temperature usually in the infrared sauna, you can't really go above 60 degrees Celsius or 70 at maximum. So for there also, you would have to sit at least like 20, 25 minutes to get the benefits. And in the traditional heat sauna, the wooden sauna is, the temperature can go up to like 100 degrees. So for that, I would imagine that 15 minutes is going to be the minimal effective dose to kind of get the response. Of course, you can take it for longer, but then you also have to, be careful with like electrolytes, dehydration. Maybe some people have high blood pressure, so they still have to be cautious of that. But yeah, usually I do it 15 to 30 minutes, and almost every day. Like on some days I use the infrared, on other days maybe once or twice a week I use the traditional heat sauna.
And then the question often comes when I talk to you: what's best, infrared or normal sauna?
Right. Well, I do like the traditional heat sauna because it gets hotter and you sweat more and feels more like invigorating. But if I were to only choose one, then I would probably take the infrared sauna, because it's there's some unique benefits that you get from the infrared as well. So the red light and the infrared, it's going to have a more deeper penetrative effect on your body. So it's going to stimulate collagen synthesis. It's going to help with tendons, also improves mitochondrial functioning, and has let's say some more unique benefits besides just the immune system and cardiovascular benefits that you get from the regular sauna.
Got it. That's good to know. I've looked at getting an infrared sauna in my living room. I think it would look a bit strange, but it would be pretty awesome.
Well, I have a small, kind of corridor in my next to my room, and there's like boxes of books and the infrared sauna. So it's a very compact space, but it's but it does fills up it nicely.
That's fantastic. I've seen those kind of blankets as well that you can lie in that are like infrared saunas. Have you looked more into that? Doesn't seem as cozy.
Right. Well, yeah, I think it's, you sweat a lot as well. So I think it's going to be pretty disgusting after a while there. But I haven't used it myself. But I think it still works in a sense that it does elevate your body temperature, and you're still going to get the hypothermia and the heat shock response.
So the whole increase in temperature. So we have one of the warmest days in Denmark, 28 degrees. If I lie outside for like a half an hour in the sun, I will get sweaty as hell. Does that activate some of the same systems, or?
Maybe like a little bit, but you probably won't get the heat shock protein response. You do, get some UV radiation from the sunlight and vitamin D synthesis. So those things will have already the additional immune system benefits as well. But it wouldn't probably have a cardiovascular effect. So it doesn't, improve your heart function directly as it would like in a sauna, because the temperature isn't just that high. Your hyperthermia begins around 37.5 degrees Celsius, your body temperature. So you have to have a small fever almost. You're mimicking a fever when you're doing it. And usually it's not going to happen if you're just, sunbathing.
No, got it. And what are other things that you've seen or that you also write about in the book that we can do to improve our immune system?
Right.
I'm guessing sleep is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get to sleep, I want to talk about just what wrecks your immune system, or what damages it and weakens it. So actually, a lot of the pandemic did reveal that the people who had the worst outcomes of the virus were usually metabolically sick. They were basically with metabolic syndrome, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, those types of things. And those conditions, especially hyperglycemia or diabetes, they do have a negative effect on the immune system by destroying the immune cells and not allowing the body to deal with the actual infection when it does hit you. So that's why it's very important to be metabolically healthy as well. And it's one of the, let's say, the most direct or the most impactful actually systems or levels of defense that you have, your metabolic health. And that involves being in a good body weight, not being overweight, not being obese, not having normal biomarkers, especially when it comes to metabolic syndrome. So low triglycerides, lower cholesterol, lower blood sugar, lower insulin, high HDL. Those are good signs of metabolic health. And also nutrient deficiencies. So vitamin D deficiency is bad, magnesium deficiency, and some others like zinc, selenium, and iodine. Those have a pretty powerful effect, because all your antioxidant defense systems, as well the immune cells, they do require different kinds of nutrients and minerals and vitamins to function properly. So what kind of supplements do you take if you're okay, now it's a pandemic, or now there's a higher chance that I'll get hit? Mm-hmm. Well, I do take a vitamin D supplement, D3 supplement almost every day, because of, in Estonia and in Denmark as well, there's not a lot of sunlight all the time. So just for a precautionary measure, I do, let's say, increase the dose maybe if it's in the winter months, and if I am worried, if I were to be worried about getting infected, or if my vitamin D levels were low, then I would increase the dose as well. So your blood test results have to also be taken into account when you are supplementing anything.
How often do you do blood test?
I usually at least once a year I do the blood panel. If I'm changing something, or if I want to, specifically know about something, then I'll do it more often. But usually once or twice a year is maximum. And besides vitamin D, I also take, magnesium, because it's very important, and it's also one of the most common deficiencies besides vitamin D, maybe. And what kind of magnesium? So there's different formats, right? Yeah, well, there's different ones. Generally, it's not that important which one, because they're all going to have like some effect on your magnesium status. So, but some of the worst ones that may not do the trick are like magnesium oxide and citrate, because they're not really that absorbed well. One of the best ones are magnesium glycinate, taurate, threonate, aspartate maybe, and maybe something else. But the what?
I think there's something magnesium malate.
Malate, yeah, that's also good. So those would be the best ones. Magnesium oxide tends to be the worst. So
super. It's good to know. Like if you spend money on supplements, it's also spending on the right stuff, right? And that's
right.
The whole supplement industry is a huge challenge figuring out what is actually good quality and not. So you actually do spend your money right.
Yeah, for sure.
And what would you do if you got COVID? What would you do to ensure that you recovered the quickest, or some other virus infection?
Mm-hmm. Right. With the COVID or the cytokine storm was one of the bigger, let's say, trend words around there. And actually, that there are certain like these inflammasome complexes that lead to the cytokine storm, and one of them are like NLRP3 inflammasome and NFKB, those different kinds of inflammatory factors. So you need to kind of manage your inflammation if you were to get sick, and chances are one of the ways the virus works is by spreading the inflammation and kind of weakening your anti-inflammatory defenses. So one way the Dr. James did publish like these different anti-NLRP3 inflammasome compounds a few like before, like around the beginning of the pandemic. He had like a paper, and there are different kinds of them, like quercetin. Then there's like the spirulina actually has these kinds of effects. Of course, like vitamin C, zinc, selenium, all those things I would take as a supplement as well, because they're just really central for the immune system as well. I would for sure drink water more. I would maybe try to sweat a lot, underneath the blanket or something, because the fever response is also actually like a natural way of dealing with any kind of infection and virus. So I wouldn't take like a sauna, but I would, sweat underneath the blanket and drink a lot of water, take some of these vitamins, and hope for the best, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good breathing and relax and believe in the best, the positive mindset. Makes a lot of sense. What are other things in the book? Like, what else should I do? So I got that I definitely need to keep my weight. I need to get the right supplements. I need to put my body for some kind of stress. So like preventing it, like stress. I know you do a lot of cold water as well. So I'm guessing that's also part of the good stress.
Cold also has similar anti-inflammatory effects and immunomodulatory effects. So it's slightly different than the heat, and I think it can also be slightly more dangerous than the heat, or like with more some of the negative side effects. So it's easier to overdo the cold than to overdo the heat. And I usually do take like a cold bath, maybe a few times a week, or like a cold shower. And it's still quite beneficial if you do it on a regular basis. So it kind of increases your, let's say, brown fat as well, which is for better metabolic health, improves insulin sensitivity, can actually help with like a weight loss, because if you're like shivering, then you do burn a bit more calories as well. Yep.
And what else should I be doing? Say that I'm one of the people that have too much time on my hand, not have to work too much. So I'm just like, all right, I'm stacking up with all these things.
You mean like in terms of strengthening the immune system?
Yeah.
Right. Well, one, exercise is obviously very important. So, but with exercise, they find that anything longer than like an hour and a half or something tends to increase actually the risk of the upper respiratory infections by 2 to 3-fold compared to being sedentary. Then that does also increase your risk, but it's actually smaller than overtraining. So overtraining can actually be worse for the immune system than not training at all. But if you do exercise in moderation, like within an hour, then that is actually reduces the risk quite a lot. So you still, for optimal, health and optimal immunity, you want to be doing some moderate exercise, but overtraining is probably not a good idea, especially if you're like sick.
Goes back to that balance. I saw you talk as well in Finland at the Nordic Biohacker Summit, where you talked about it as well, like stress is good for us, but we need the right balance of stress, right?
Yeah. Everything has like this positive and negative side, and what makes something dangerous is the dose. How much are you getting? How well are you recovering from it? And that sort of thing.
Yeah. So when I follow you as well, you're starting to, you might have done that for a while, but I started noticing more. You share a lot about mindset and Stoicism and how, like, what can we actually do something about?
Right. Yeah. Well, Stoicism especially, useful during times when you don't have like a lot of perceived control over things. Like you see the world around you, in shambles or crumbling down, and you really can't do much about it. Then the only thing that you can really do is control your own mindset. And the idea behind Stoicism is not just that, but is one of the, let's say, the more practical values that you may get from it. That you can only control in a world where you can only control so little. The small things that you do control have like a massive impact on your well-being and actually your productivity, your results and success in life as well. So Stoicism, teaches you to start to see behind your emotions and develop better self-control, that sort of thing. At the same time, also kind of strengthening your mindset and as well as your body. Like cold exposure is a Stoic practice actually, because you're doing something uncomfortable. You're putting yourself into this, like a really uncomfortable situation, but you're strengthening your mind and body at the same time.
Yeah. So Siim, you've looked into, like, again, as I started mentioning out, one of the things or reasons why I really love following your stuff is because you actually look into studies and you often put those studies out there. So it's possible to follow, like, where do you got the information from? You actually backs it up, kind of in like the good way in academia that you put the references in. What's one thing that you're seeing that many people in the health space are saying, but that from your research is actually wrong, something they kind of misunderstood and is a counter into, or like actually not a good advice?
Well, that's a good question, because you can always find something that backs up your claims and something that refutes it at the same time. So, like, for example, in animal studies or in cell studies, like eating a bunch of fat or eating a bunch of protein gives them, cardiovascular disease or accelerates their aging. But at the same time, if you take it to humans, then it doesn't have like any effect. So it depends on what kind of study are you referring to. And but I think maybe one of the biggest ones recently has to do with, also this, like recently there's been like this carnivore diet, which, says, that you shouldn't eat like any plants because, they're toxins and they actually make you worse, they're actually, harmful to you, and you would be better off by actually only eating meat, which, isn't that really true, because the plants themselves, they are, let's say, slightly have these phytochemicals in them and phytonutrients, but those things actually have like, beneficial effect on the body through the same, mechanism of this positive stress. So they activate the body's defense systems and increase your antioxidant capacity, and also have like some other beneficial effects on the system. So, and even like in most research, just eating more vegetables and eating different plants actually has better health outcomes in almost all cases. Whereas we don't have any studies on the carnivore diet, and that sort of thing. It's a very it's a very nuanced point, in the sense that eating meat isn't necessarily bad, but I would say that eating an omnivorous diet is still by far more optimal for the vast majority of people who are like living in a free world than they don't necessarily are, let's say, diehard health fanatics.
Yeah. How is your diet? I know you've been doing the 1 meal a day for a while. Are you still doing that?
On most days I am doing some form of it. So it's like 1.5 meals or something. So it's not fully 1 meal. But
just quick comments for like the people that are listening that don't see the video. Siim is really buff. So my fear, I've always been a skinny guy and have a hard time gaining weight. I'll be like, one meal a day, like I'm just going to get even more skinny. I saw pictures of you earlier as well, and you seem to have a body structure like from back in the days that's more similar to mine, except that you have a lot more muscles. So that's definitely not the case.
Right. Yeah. Well, muscle growth is or gaining weight and muscle growth is a matter of the right training and getting enough calories as well as a protein. So although I am eating in a smaller time frame, I'm still able to hit the required numbers that I need. And yeah, it's
you get that much food down in one meal. Like I'm stuffing my face and I'm like there's no day tomorrow, and I feel like my stomach is full, even though people say I often eat quite a lot.
Right. Well, I eat like slightly higher calorie foods, so I'm not eating spinach or or celery or something like that. So yeah, I usually eat like some meats and some carbs maybe on some days, and vegetables. So yeah, I do eat like all different kinds of foods. But yeah, like it's easier to get your calories from some beef or meat that is also higher in protein.
So you eat beef, meat, and what else would like a meal like that look like? I don't think I've seen that many food pictures from you. You're not the classical Instagrammer with with
Right.
the meals all the time.
Right. Well, usually it's maybe like a like a pound of like either some meat or fish, or maybe like some eggs as well next to it, with some vegetables, broccoli, carrots, some potatoes maybe on some days, and cauliflower. Those are usually my go-to foods.
Yeah.
So it's relatively like simple in a sense. So I don't have like good pictures because I don't do a lot of recipes. So I do just the whole foods in their just cooked form.
Fair. I definitely have to try more of that. I do the 16-hour fasting most days, but I kind of follow like what my body is craving in regards to like, do I eat before the 16 hours? But often my body doesn't crave food before after 16 hours now. So, but the whole one meal a day is also interesting. It also gives you more time that you don't have to prep for food that many times.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not like superior for muscle growth, so to say. So it's definitely harder to build muscle with it, and it's harder for most people to pull it off. But yeah, I do it because of the time management, and I don't know, kind of gotten used to it, and it's very convenient.
Yeah, cool. Other things that I should do, or the listeners should do to strengthen our immune system, so we are kind of like just ready for whatever comes our way. I like that approach, being like, I'm prepping, I'm not scared hiding, but I'm making sure that my body is strong and ready for whatever comes its way.
Yeah. The one that we already touched upon is the intermittent fasting. So that also actually has beneficial effects on the immune system. This preventative effect again. And in nature, like animals also, when they get sick, then they usually stop eating and until they get well. So it's a natural response, this like desire or lack of hunger when you get sick. But at the same time, it also has more direct effect on the immune system by lowering inflammation and also boosting some of these immune cells, white blood cells, for example. And one clear thing to like slow down the immune system aging is to deal with these senescent cells that accumulate. Zombie cells, as they're called. These senescent cells, they're spreading this inflammation and not really doing anything else, just damaging the healthy cells. And as we get older, the more senescent cells we accumulate, and one of the ways to get rid of them is through like fasting. Fasting does it. Plus, there's like different compounds as well, like quercetin and fisetin, for example. But like fasting is one of the more natural ways of doing so.
Fasting is cheap, it's easy. It's I guess whether you call it biohacks or whatever is one of the things that I'm definitely a big fan of. Again, because it's something everyone can like implement. It's not tied up to whether you have a lot of money to buy like a sauna or a hyperbaric oxygen chamber or something else. Still haven't don't have any friends yet with a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, but it's high on the list.
Right.
What are some of, because like you're very much in the Nordic region of like the when I talk about biohacking, I often see that we in the Nordic have more of a focus on the natural part and more like not just gadgets with like bling bling, but like what can we actually do? What are some of the top natural things that we haven't talked about?
Right. Well, I don't know. Maybe the most natural thing is to just go into a forest and spend time there. So that's like called forest bathing. And it also has been found to have beneficial effects on like both stress and the immune system. So yeah, spending time in nature is pretty relaxing and has a positive effect on the body and the mind. So, the reasons why, maybe has to do with some of the grounding effects so that you're less surrounded by these electronics, but as well as maybe fresh air, just good visuals, that sort of thing. So the kind of mind plays a pretty big role in just the overall state of the body when you are in nature.
Yeah, I definitely love doing that as well. I talked to Timo the other day on the podcast as well, and he was also talking about very much about nature. He talked about nettles as well as being something that he was a fan of. It's fantastic with the plant medicine, what you can actually get out of a natural plant.
Yeah, for sure. Like these wild herbs are also pretty strong, or they have more of these toxins, and because of that they also have a bigger immunomodulatory effects on the body. Of course you can overdo them, and but in like this medicinal doses, they actually have been used for centuries.
You're making a movie right now about resilience. Tell me a bit more about that. I've seen a few clips that looks cool, but what's the plot behind it and so on?
Right. Well, the plot or the idea is this Stronger by Stress. So it's named after the book, and we're just talking about the same topics, resilience through the lens of biohacking. How do you do the sauna, cold, fasting, diet, exercise, all the other things, stress management, meditation, mindfulness, all those things into your enhancing yourself and making yourself stronger, both physically and mentally. And we involved a lot of the people from Finland in the biohacker center, and it's expected to come out maybe later this summer or maybe like early fall.
Looking forward to seeing that. I'm curious about what's something you've been surprised about in this health journey that you've been on, something where like, okay, that didn't make sense at like the first look at it, but it actually is quite powerful.
How big of a role the mind has, your mental state and your mindset, how big of an effect does that have on, let's say, for your immune system or your stress levels. So it's pretty pronounced. Like even in some studies find that if you believe that stress has like a negative effect on you, then it actually will. Whereas if you don't believe that, then it doesn't, or at least like the effects are going to be smaller. So it goes to show how big an effect your, let's say, mindset and perception on the reality actually manifests itself. If you are mentally scared of something much more, then your body is going to also overreact to it, and you're going to experience more negative side effects from that perception, not necessarily from the reality. So your perception has a direct effect on the physiological state of your body.
There's this really known TED Talk as well. I don't remember the name, but a woman that talks about how she was telling a lot about stress and how she realized afterwards that she was probably part of killing people in regards to making them more afraid of stress instead of actually seeing how stress can be positive. And just as you're saying, like the way that you look at stress has a big impact on how it affects you. I think that's extremely fascinating. And also, I think this whole situation we have right now with like how we're making people extremely scared and so on, and we're not focusing on how to build up the body instead. I think that is, mind-blowing in regards to what results we would have if we were focusing on a positive mindset, the stuff that we can actually do.
Absolutely.
So, but many things to work on. So Siim, time is running. I would love to have you for like 5 more hours and just pick your brain. But I know I'll be seeing you at the next conferences and so on. I often end up asking the guest about 1 to 3 final advice on how to live a happy, healthy, and meaningful life. You probably touched on some of them right now, but like, what are your top things for showing up and being the person that you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think first, the first thing would be to, have some sort of, let's say, goal or like a purpose type of thing, because, that's going to give you like a bigger sense of meaning. And with that, you will also have, let's say, more willpower. You're going to get less tired doing things, and you will also be happier probably. Like if you're, pursuing your dreams and things like that, then it doesn't feel like you're working, and everything else, you have just a more enjoyable time doing what you do. When it comes to health, then maybe for health, it would be just maybe a little bit of fasting probably, because you can learn a lot about doing that. You can learn a lot about your body. You can learn a lot about your how different things affect you, and that has like just a positive effect, not only like in your health, but just mindfulness in general. And lastly would be maybe like meditation, something like that, to teach your mind to be more present, and also just manage stress and be calm or more relaxed.
I like it. Those are definitely things that I live by as well. So I get curious when you say like I have a purpose, and someone might be listening to the podcast and be like, how can I work with Siim? So there's different ways with your books and so on, but like the short version of where your purpose is and what you like to build. So someone might be able to help in that.
Right. Well, it's something that is very, the purpose is to always follow the purpose or whatever it may be. So it's never like this very stagnant thing. It may change, and you shouldn't feel like, let's say, intimidated by not having a purpose on something. You may develop it, but you have to kind of have at least some navigation point or some sort of an anchor that is directing you.
Got it. Where can people find out more about you? What's the best places to go follow? So I already revealed that I follow you on Instagram and really enjoy your post.
Yeah, well, I'm Siim Land on all the social media platforms, and my website is also siimland.com.
Yeah. And you've written several books that people can read. You have some online courses and do some coaching as well. Yeah,
it's all on the website, siimland.com.
Super. So if anyone is interested, that's the place to go find it. Siim, I really appreciate your time here on the podcast. I look forward to try to implement more of the stuff that you share. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.